we'll have a 4-team college football playoff this year. I don't want to be that person, but I will for a second say you could probably insert a couple of those already, which is why the screams and the yells for college football playoff expansion. I've since changed my mind on it. I don't know that it'll dictate and change the outcome too much. I still think you're going to see probably the same rotation of 4 teams in the national championship, but change is coming again to college football, which is the one constant, Paul, as we get into another year of the 4-team college football playoff. How do you believe, big picture, this new era that we're going to usher in a year with an expanded playoff will help either alter the regular season for better or for good? And for these other teams that say they're playoff caliber teams, how do you think that'll impact them moving forward?
Well, it would change the perception dramatically. Not 100% sure how, but the line gets changed. Right now, what do we talk about once the season starts? Who's in, who's out? That's going to be a tough SportsCenter question, Matt. In October of 24, who's your top 12? I mean, it's too long. So then it becomes, if you didn't make the playoff, what does that mean? There used to be bowl. It used to be bowl eligible. Are you in the running for your conference championship? And now I think if you're a name brand, if you're a Clemson or a Southern Cal or Ohio State or Alabama, and you don't make the playoffs, that's really a bad year. Forget losing in the semifinals on a botched field goal. So perceptions start to change. I do think it makes certain games maybe early in the year less important, right. But I don't think it makes games late in the year less important, as some people fear, because here we go. I'm going to use the NFL model. We do care about games that help determine whether you're in the playoffs, whether you avoid a bye, or whether you get home field. And I think that narrative is going to come to college football very quickly.
Well, what I think it does too is this is the one area where it is going to be impacted. We know the SEC is getting rid of divisions, which I've long been a proponent of. Get rid of divisions and all the conferences. Show me the best 2 teams in the conference championship game. I don't care if they're from the East or the West. We've seen it in the Big Ten. It's been a one-side dominated Big Ten. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State. They're always the winner of the Big Ten championship. But what it does do, you get rid of the divisions. You have the best teams in college football play for the conference championship. But Paul, I think it takes a little bit away from conference championship games, because if you go in and it's Alabama and Georgia playing in the conference championship, or Alabama, LSU, let's just use that for this take because we're out of divisions. I mean, the loser could still get in. And so then what are we playing a conference championship game for if at the end of the day, both teams are still going to be in what most teams covet, which is the college football playoff? And so I think there's going to be a revisiting of that conversation, because there might be a day and age, Paul. Let's just say, for the sake of this argument, that it is Alabama and LSU playing in the reconfigured SEC championship game. Well, why would either of those coaches risk anything in a now expanded playoff, which now adds more games to the season to ultimately get to a national championship?
No, I think it could. Some of the epic games that we've seen, the Alabama-Georgia games of a couple of years, not the most recent one, but a couple of years ago, are going to be lessened. And not to relitigate, but Kirby Smart's perfect season went down the drain in 21, losing to Alabama, but it almost assured him of winning the championship. Alabama lost a key wide receiver in that game, and Georgia just wasn't quite mentally dialed in, because they knew they had a freebie, and you can't explain it, but it does work that way. And I mean, there's some really rough scenarios. You have 2 undefeated teams, and they, it's possible you could have that. It's possible you could have three or four meetings of a Michigan and Ohio State in regular season. The next week in the championship game, you could get them again. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors, but I still think it's worth doing, only because I think it makes, not to use a political phrase here, but I'm using a phrase that matters to college football. By being inclusive, it means more programs are going to participate, and I think that's good.
Yeah, and look, we've seen the conference realignment. The Big 12 is welcoming in a whole new slew of teams, and UCF being one of them, Houston being one of them, BYU being another. There are a lot of programs now that for survival, they had to get into the Power Five to even be considered a playoff caliber team. And we're going to see, it's funny with the realignment and everything that's going on, USC, UCLA, Big Ten next year, SEC, Texas, and Oklahoma. All of this was done pre-playoff expansion era, but ultimately we think it's leading to the same thing where you've got a group of 60 teams that are going to be playing for the 12 playoff spots. And within the next 2 to 3 years, the sport that we love, we're still going to love it, but it's going to look completely different. Because, Paul, I bet if we looked back even 3 to 4 years, how this game has evolved into what it is now, we're evolving with it because, quite frankly, we have zero choice.
Yeah, and I think the biggest net upside, Matt, is going to be December, which, as you well know, college football just completely cedes to the NFL, and now it's going to be a very dramatic month. It will be chaotic, but we'll see things we've never seen before, as opposed to now we have the championship game, and the next week's the Army-Navy game, which is great. Okay, Heisman, all that, but still, and then we wait for the first round of bowl games, which are not terribly scintillating unless you've got a bet in Vegas.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.